Welcome to Semcast at Concordia Seminary in St. Louis. I'm Dale Meyer. Joining me is Dr. Paul Meyer, Professor of Ancient History at Western Michigan University. He is also the author of many books, including co-writing The Da Vinci Code, Fact or Fiction. Welcome, Paul. Welcome to your alma mater, Concordia Seminary, St. Louis.
Great to be back.
You graduated from this a few years back.
A few years, yeah.
Yeah, and now, what do they call you at Western Michigan?
Professor of Ancient History, but the students are switching the adjective because I've been there 40 years, and so it's now Ancient Professor of History.
The Ancient Professor. Well,
same effect.
Yeah. Well, we're going to tap into your knowledge of ancient history to talk about this Da Vinci Code, which just has the country obsessed, because we're finding out a lot of things that you church people have been hiding from us. And so now we're going to get down and dirty about all the things the church has been hiding from you. For those of us who may not live on this planet, what's the basic premise of the Da Vinci Code?
Basic premise is that Jesus married Mary Magdalene, and they had a daughter named Sarah. And they went to France, and evidently Sarah intermarried with the French royal dynasty, and so there are people walking around Paris to the present day yet with Jesus genes and chromosomes in. And the church has kept this hidden from you. And the reason it has is because there's a group called the Priory of Sion, S-I-O-N, a crusading order supposedly founded in the city of Jerusalem in 1099 A.D., which keeps the secret that Jesus married Mary Magdalene alive. Now, Dan Brown begins the Da Vinci Code with the first page in which he says this is a fact because he matches it next to Opus Dei, which everybody knows is a very conservative Roman Catholic organization. So we have truth mixed with fiction. The
Opus
Dei is real, and the Priory of Sion is total fiction.
What are some of the major historical errors in the Da Vinci Code?
Well, to say, for example, that the Priory of Sion exists as an ancient organization founded in 1099, when in fact it was founded in the city of Paris in 1956 AD. And it was founded on the basis of fraudulent documents which were planted there by a French anti-Semitic crook named Pierre Plantard.
Well, you're a churchman. You're saying they're fraudulent. I mean,
so
can they be proved?
Oh, they went to court over it.
Okay.
It was proven fraud. Okay. And the fellow forger who crafted these documents, they're called les documents secrets, the secret documents in the Bibliothèque Nationale, the French National Library. They were forged on the basis of to give the impression that there were a bunch of grand masters in the Priory of Sion, ranging from Sandro Botticelli, the Italian sculptor of the Renaissance, to Leonardo himself, Victor Hugo, Isaac Newton. All these great names were, of course, all forged. They're an insult to their memories, and yet this is the main thread of the plot on which the Da Vinci Code is based.
How do we know that Jesus didn't marry Mary Magdalene?
We know that he didn't marry her simply because, take the scene at the cross in Good Friday. He takes care of his mother. Mary's at the base of the cross weeping away. Wouldn't it have been logical for him also to take care of his dear wife if, in fact, they were married?
Yeah, but let me push you. You know, those Bible books have been translated so many times. Nobody knows what they really said, and, you know, the church made these stories up years after.
Thank you, Dan Brown. No, as a matter of fact, instead of the Bible evolving to different versions because of bad translations and so forth, like the Muslims claim, see, they say we don't have reliable scripture. It's quite the opposite, because now with more and more Greek New Testament manuscripts being discovered in whole or in fragment, we're getting a more and more accurate version of the original word-for-word documents than ever before in history. King James Version, based on 6 Greek manuscripts in 1611. Today, our latest translations are based on 5,700 Greek manuscripts or fractions thereof. So it's quite the opposite. We're not evolving. We're getting back to a closer and closer precise version of the original documents. Now, the other reason we can prove that Jesus wasn't married is 1 Corinthians 9:5, where St. Paul is talking about his apostolic credentials. And he says, "Don't I have a right to have a wife as the brothers of the Lord do, and the apostles. Now, if Jesus had been married, he would have said, our Lord and Master set the precedent, but I'm going to go one better. I'm not married. See, he doesn't say that. And so really it's a fiction. There's total fiction.
I mean, that's a powerful argument from 1 Corinthians. And I'm being serious now, too. I think a lot of people in this day and age don't realize that the early church was very careful in selecting the books that we know as the New Testament.
Absolutely.
I mean, they went through a rigorous screening.
The church is not trying to hide these Gnostic Gospels, as they're called, from anybody's reading. Go ahead, read them. You can immediately see why they never made the final cut to the big four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They are full of all kinds of strange vagaries and misspelled terms and invented places and angels and eons and luminaries, and it's like the latest Gospel of Judas, which is making such a big fuss right now. Everybody is focusing on the one sensational line where it looks like Jesus and Judas may have been in cahoots. Read the rest of it. It is just chock full of word salad. Names that were invented. Judas says to Jesus, I know where you've come from. You've come from the spiritual region of Barbello. You know, don't try to find it on your map.
Barbello, it's not in southern France.
I don't think so, no.
I was talking to one of our Concordia Seminary professors, and he said he had been in some store and picked one of these books up and just started to flip through it casually. He said he found mistakes on every page.
Every page, absolutely.
It's just all over the place. But now, Paul, some people are going to say, hey, this is just fiction.
Oh,
what's
they say
the
that
harm?
all the time. Oh, I get that all the time. When I'm inveighing against the Da Vinci Code, they say, chill out, Meyer. It's fiction, isn't it? Okay, let's talk about fiction. You have two levels in normal fiction, a novel. You have the foreground characters that are fictional, interacting. Help yourself. Do with them what you want.
Put a footnote in here. What are your qualifications to talk about a novel?
Well, I also write them, President Dale. I also write
Promote yourself here, Paul.
No, I'm humble. I'm humble. I don't do that. But in any case,
you have written several historical novels.
Pontius Pilate, Flames of Rome, and then also some very contemporary novels, Skeleton in God's Closet, and More Than a Skeleton, which are just fun and games.
But
now,
you know what you're talking about when you talk about writing a novel.
Indeed. Okay, so we have foreground characters that are fictional. Do with them what you want, who cares? But the setting, the background, usually is credible and very accurate. Example, have there been any novels written about World War II? Of course there have, hundreds. Funny thing in those novels, every time the Nazis lose and the Allies win. Why is that? Duh, because it happened. Now, here's the point. What Dan Brown has done, he has fictionalized the foreground. Help yourself, Dan, not a problem. But he's lied about the background. In other words, if Dan were using the same rules to write a novel about World War II that he used in the Da Vinci Code, he would have no trouble telling us that Hitler won the war and put Roosevelt on trial in Washington, D.C. and Churchill in London. And people with no historical knowledge, the younger set particularly, who weren't around in World War II, would believe that. And they are believing the false background, even as I speak, in the Da Vinci Code now.
Yeah, let's talk about the dangers that this presents to individuals and also to the Christian church.
The Christian church will survive nicely, thank you. I'm not worried as much about the Da Vinci Code as a Christian as I am as an ancient historian. I can't stand facts which are inconcrete, universally agreed upon by scholars across the world, lied about. I can't take that. That just bugs me. This is where the smoke comes out of my ears and flames out of my nose. If my students tried something like this, I'd flunk them. So people are reading this as if it's history, and it isn't. It's just halfway through the book, we have about 6 lies per page for the rest of the book. It's that bad.
Is it true that where the modern American mind is at, I mean, like if you fly from St. Louis to Chicago, which is almost straight north, people will say, are we in the same time zone? People will say, what state is Chicago in? With that kind of knowledge, they're going to believe this is fact.
Yeah. This is what's so worrisome, exactly. And others who might have given the Christian faith a fair shake, they might have been seekers, are now turned off. They'll say, oh, well, I thought this was a pack of myths anyway, and this proves it. See, people read something in print and they think automatically it has to be true, and nothing is further from the truth.
What are the efforts now being made to counter the Da Vinci Code, the Gospel of Judas, or at least to let people know, hey, you cannot take this seriously? You've got your book, the Da Vinci Code, Fact or Fiction. You want to tell us about this?
Well, there are 12 others like it, as a matter of fact.
Really?
There's a very powerful Christian resistance, but this only adds to the sales of the original. That's the tragedy of it. You can't win here because ideally, probably no book or article should have been written against it. It would have had a short time in the bestseller list and died a natural death. But the rule for getting a bestseller is create controversy. Then it has a life of its own. Ask Mel Gibson how that goes with the Passion of the Christ. He had free advertising a year and a half in advance. Everybody talking about anti-Semitism, whatever else, he had it made. If nobody would have responded, the film would barely have gotten its original investment back, because there have been better films on Jesus. But because of the controversy, now I think Mel Gibson is 7 times his investment, because it became a thing. Controversy is the mother of sales. And that is exactly what's happening right now.
Do you think, in light of all this, that the Christian church is fielding the scholars for the future generation, scholars like you yourself have been, to counter these things? Are we fielding pastors who know enough to tell their people, hey, wait a minute, beware?
I hope we are. And the thing that worries me is this. Christian apologetics, defending the faith, seems to be something of a failing art until all these challenges came along. Now there's a lot more interest in what we call the science of defending the Christian faith, which is apologetics, as you well know. And I think it's very important for such a time as this, because the Da Vinci Code is not the only attack on Christianity right now. They're coming left and right. Michael Bajan, for example, who along with Lincoln and Lay wrote the book, the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, from which Dan Brown got most of his plot, by the way. And I wondered why they didn't sue him, but they did, it turns out. And at first I wanted Dan Brown's nose rubbed in the soil, and then I realized, hold it, Michael Bajan is worse, if you can believe it, than Dan Brown. And so I didn't want him to win either, and he didn't. But he's now come out with a book called The Jesus Papers, subtitle, Exposing the Greatest Cover-Up in History. As if that weren't enough, we have another book out called The Jesus Dynasty. And there are just one after another, seizing on this moment of questioning the faith and creating controversy and thereby getting sales. Happens every time.
So you can fool most of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time.
Close to it.
And we thank you for helping give us the information that we need as we are surrounded by all this new truth, things that the church has been hiding from us. Thank you very much, Dr. Paul Meyer, ancient professor of ancient history at Western Michigan University, and we're very proud that you're an alumnus of Concordia Seminary. This has been a timely topic, and I want to thank you for joining us at the Semcast. For more topical issues that affect our world, and for other information about the church and Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, please subscribe to Semcast. It's our ongoing podcast that's now available through iTunes and also at Concordia Seminary's website, www.csl.edu, www.csl.edu. And when you get there, look under resources. I'll see you next time.